welcome all. We get the SaberSim Showdown preview for tonight's game, and you know it. It's great to have AP here. You know why? Well, not just because of this AP, but we get a Chiefs slate tonight. The first one on a Monday or Thursday night since week 1, I believe. So a lot has changed in Kansas City before the season started to now. You know, you would have thought we would have Hollywood Brown. You had Rashee Rice. You had all this talent on the offensive end. Well, now the Chiefs are out a couple pieces with Rashee Rice, hopefully not out for the year. I mean, the fact that they haven't declared him out for the year is actually slightly promising. But AP, talk to me. How are you doing today? Are you excited about the Chiefs' chances tonight?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a best ball bro, like, do you just and let's just say you're all in on the Bengals and stacking up Burrow? Do you just victor it? Like, do we give the trophy to you right now? I mean, the defense can't stop anyone, and their offense looks incredible, like absolutely incredible. I mean, again, tough if you're a Bengals fan, obviously, because your offense is probably the best in the NFL. Like, they are absolutely insane, and their defense probably the worst in the NFL. I don't know, but and the Chiefs, it's like the opposite. Like, we're back to last year. It's Mahomes finding ways to win, and which the elites quarterbacks do. Everyone was slurping Josh Allen 2 weeks in. I mean, I can't, like, best quarterback in the NFL. I kept seeing that over and over. I mean, Mahomes has been doing this with no weapons for a while now. Yes, a good defense that they lean on, for sure. I will give them that. But great quarterbacks find ways to win, and that's what the Chiefs and Mahomes are doing right now. Rubio, I was surprised. I was doing my optimal work last week, 17-10 game, like one of the more boring NFL games that I've seen against the Chiefs, against the Chargers. And it was crazy, 17-10, and we didn't have a defense. We didn't have a kicker in the optimal. It was 2 tight ends and 2 quarterbacks, 2 receivers with a wide receiver captain. So pretty interesting optimal there. And honestly, I think the slate's going to be really fun to break down tonight. I feel like I have a pretty good read on Kansas City, especially how to attack them defensively. And I think the Saints, I mean, just they got so many issues going on right now as well. So I think it's going to be a fun showdown slate tonight.
Yeah, absolutely going to be fun. I mean, we have a lot to talk about too. I mean, you had Kareem Hunt popping in the top lineup for our base build. So if you guys aren't familiar with what a base build is, we just kind of optimize mode or just sim mode and then just see what the top few teams are, right? So I'm doing the top 20 teams. We built out 5,000 teams using SaberSim. And the top teams that we have right now are a punt captain with Juwan Johnson. This is just an idea of where the slate could go. Like, what are most people going to see if they're trying to get the highest score possible? And the first thing that sticks out to me, AP, cheap captain, right? That is going to be something that you probably see a little bit of, right? When I go to captain, let's see if we can find one that is a little more expensive. And no, the most expensive one that we have is Carson Steele at 6,600. I want your take on that backfield a little bit later, but let's go ahead and see if we can get, even stretching it out to 200, what do these builds look like if you were just trying to focus on projected score only? Look, 200 lineups in. We don't have anyone above Travis Kelce. And these are what these builds look like. What's your first take on this, AP?
I mean, my first take is both teams right now. When you think about the Saints, you got a true bell cow back in Alvin Kamara. And now with Taysom Hill out, in theory, that goal line work should be his. And the problem is, dude, Kansas City has been so good defensively, especially against running backs. Now, again, they have not seen a running back yet like Alvin Kamara. I mean, saw Derrick Henry week 1, but obviously that was Derrick Henry just getting going with his new team. And then the other thing, too, is, God, the Saints' offensive line issues. I think they have 2 or 3 offensive linemen that are out. And that's obviously been a huge issue for them over the past couple of weeks. Just, the injury bug, obviously, naturally. And it's kind of crazy when you think about these two teams. One team in the Saints, their main injuries are in the trenches. And with Kansas City, it's their skill position players. Their defense is intact. Their offensive line is intact. So I think that is somewhat telling. I just, and thinking back to last night, like, I was trying to find ways to force in the CD Lambs, the guy George Pickens I was high on, Najee Harris, but it wasn't. It was one of these secondary pieces. I feel like this game tonight, it feels like a really similar script, a grinded out game that is kind of boring, where the Chiefs come away, they find a way to win by 3 points, something like that, where kickers will play a factor. Maybe a defensive touchdown will play a factor. And then it's, who's it going to be? Is it a tight end from the Saints side? Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, tight ends against Kansas City has been an absolute nut flowchart spot. One of the best for sure. They are an absolute funnel right now. They've been very, very good against like taking away that key number one player. So it's a slate where we have to, I think, get our projections to really line up with these different environments to kind of embrace, the variance, because I think it's one where we could definitely see a surprising captain. And so I'm not like, Rubio, to answer your question in a very long format, punt captain or like a random captain, I'm going to be fine with tonight. Sure. Does it feel better to put the Travis Kelce's, Kamara's up there? Probably, but I feel like we likely see some sort of a random captain tonight.
Yeah, it checks out there. And this is, for an example, projected score only, right? We're not running the sims just yet. We will a little bit later on. This is what a build like that would look like. And you know what? That's a pretty damn good build too with Alvin Kamara. 116.4. These other teams are hitting 125.4, which is shocking to me, actually. I did not expect a 9-point gap between that lineup and the next. One thing that I do want.
I like that build right there.
Yeah, the one with Kareem Hunt here and Juwan Johnson.
And Juwan Johnson, yeah. These tight ends against Kansas City.
Let's go ahead and talk about the quarterbacks. I really want to get into that running back situation, but I also really want to talk about quarterbacks, because is there really a 5.3-point gap here? And this is using the RPS projections, right? When I saw this, I kind of laughed a little bit, because as someone with Patrick Mahomes in his first 5 weeks of the year in my home league, I just look at it, AP, and every time I feel like on a showdown, I'm playing Patrick Mahomes, but it doesn't feel like he's really performing well for fantasy. And I think this is going to be the narrative this week, or for today. It's like, maybe Patrick Mahomes is not that good. So I don't want to, completely go away from that, because it's still Patrick Mahomes. But as far as like a fantasy output goes, Patrick Mahomes has not been good, AP. Like he's been terrible. Yes.
He's been so bad.
I don't really know exactly what I want to do with this team. Like, do I think we bump him down? I honestly think Carr and Mahomes could be closer together than 5.3 points.
So I was really surprised that I brought that week 4 optimal up, that it was a double quarterback build. Both were in the flex from the Chargers Kansas City game. And that's just kind of telling that, these floor projections do matter. So, I mean, Patrick Mahomes hasn't put up over 17.5 fantasy points yet this season, which is pretty crazy. He's faced Baltimore, which, again, teams that look what Burrow did against them. Now that was week 1, mind you. And they had Pacheco. And obviously Pacheco was running really well in that game. Then they faced Cincinnati. Look what teams are doing against Cincinnati. Yeah. Atlanta, I mean, another where we've seen a lot of offense in those type of games. So I think it's really and the other thing about Mahomes is, my gosh, like how many turnovers? He's thrown an interception in every single game. I mean, I'm getting Josh Allen vibes from my guy Patrick Mahomes. His TD to INT ratio right now is really bad. I think it's really telling on how good Kansas City's defense is right now.
Yeah.
And they're the ones winning games. Yes, Mahomes is the guy that everyone talks about. And, Mahomes always finds a way to win, or it's the refs. And yes, the refs have definitely, I wish Nebraska could get more help from the refs, because Kansas City has obviously benefited from the refs, and anyone that, and I hope tonight's different. I hope it doesn't go their way from a ref standpoint. I'm tired of hearing about that. There's a play last week that I thought was huge. It was like a crazy call. And I'm like, how do you even call that? And so I'm with you. Everyone, refs for the Chiefs and stuff. I hate that it is that way, but it really is that way right now. So it's kind of wild. But I hope that's not the case tonight. Mahomes needs to be better. He's been in this situation before. They got to get Kelsey going. And the problem from a fantasy standpoint, like on the Kansas City side and with Mahomes, is I thought Kareem Hunt looked good. I think they're going to feed him. Carson Steele hasn't looked good. I think you see split between him and P. Ryan. And then it's who do they target? It's going to be Mahomes kind of spreading it around, and maybe they take a deep shot or two with Xavier Worthy. But again, it's going to be hard for Mahomes to get there unless you get that playoff type of Mahomes, which I don't know if we're going to see yet, where he's using his feet to pick up first downs and stuff. And you just don't see that during the regular season. So I really want to bring his projection down a little bit. I want him ahead of Derek Carr, but definitely more in line, maybe a point and a half higher or something like that.
So let's talk about Carr then, right? I think we're both on the same page with Patrick Mahomes. 18.8, really high for a guy who, I like what Snyder said, won 20-point game in his last 10 games, right?
Snyder's on his knees right now, just like absolutely peeling to the Ravens still.
You know what?
He could not wait to fire off that tweet. I just knew it. I saw it yesterday.
They were not the entire time too, and the bad by the Bengals. That was a terrible ending for.
No one loves the needle our guy Big T more than Snyder, and he does it in the most obvious ways. It's always fun.
Do you think a 16-point projection from Mahomes is more in line?
Yeah, I mean, it really sets up with kind of that game script that we talked about. Yep. And the thing is his prices. Mahomes is getting think about we've done I don't know how many of these slates now, but what's our common theme that we talk about? Quarterbacks and how cheap they are. Mahomes is $11K. He does not deserve to be $11K. I can go over a ton of quarterbacks that have outperformed him. I mean, Joe Flacco yesterday threw for what, 380 some yards? I mean, from a fantasy standpoint, there are a lot of quarterbacks that are outperforming Patrick Mahomes right now, and it's a function of their offense. They're without three of their main skill position players. It's a bunch of backup scrubs. It's what we saw all last season, and I don't even know if we saw Mahomes captain all of last season. So that's the mindset that we have to get ourselves in, and it's just a projection. We just have to update, revamp the projection there, which you did. Yeah. 1.5 points above Carr, 2 points above Carr, I think is perfectly in line.
And this is where I kind of came back, and I think Dak made the optimal. I'm not exactly sure, but you look at the game like last night where it could play out very similar to this. I like what you said. To get a little ugly, all of a sudden it's like 40 points in the game total. The quarterbacks were way cheaper in these other games and stuff. And, Mahomes up 11K. Dak was 10.8 last night. It's really hard for those guys to kind of get into that winner. As far as Carr goes, are you good with 14? I know you mentioned this Chiefs defense being good, right? And they have been good. Make no mistake about it. No Taysom Hill. I think that's a little bit bigger of a deal than I think some might make it out. I think it can only help Derek Carr because you're not having those snaps taken away near the goal line, and they might be more inclined to throw it there, and it also helps Kamara. But I don't think Taysom Hill being out hurts anyone. I think it can only help Derek Carr. I'm cool with him being 2 points away from Mahomes. I think you're going to see a little bit of Carr stacks more than you're going to see Mahomes stacks, even though it's not a huge disparity. 1,400 isn't a ton. But I don't mind Carr tonight. And I do want to say, you saw the first 2 weeks of what the Saints offense can do, but the O-line issues might have you a little bit timid. But 14 is really not that high of a projection.
Yeah, I mean, look, Justin Herbert, he had 11.2 DraftKings points last week. That was enough to be in the optimal. Just think about that. So we don't want to just completely screw ourselves by way under projecting him. So I think 14 is definitely reasonable. I do see paths. I think think about yesterday. This was like a wild stat to think about. Every game in the afternoon window had a defensive touchdown. I can't recall a time that we've seen that. And I bring that up because we didn't get that in the Chargers-Chiefs game, obviously, but if that happens, there is a really, really high chance that defense is going to be optimal. Now, can it happen? Yeah, of course it can. Look how many interceptions Kansas City's throwing. So, what I'm getting at is I don't want to eliminate the quarterbacks from being flex viable. I'm not going to play. I'm not going to play him in the captain. This is not going to be a Kirk Cousins type of game where he just absolutely nuked and went off on Thursday. I do think they're viable in the flex, but I do see paths to where maybe one or no quarterbacks are in there if we get a certain type of game that pans out. So I think we just project them like you did, so that they land, kind of in line with the field. I'm pretty satisfied with that.
I like it. So one thing I noticed last week, this is against the Chargers there, Kareem Hunt was getting fed. It wasn't Carson Steele. It wasn't Samaje Perine. No, it was Kareem Hunt who was actually getting a lot of looks. My question here, how reliable is it that he's going to continue to see work, and is his workload only going to increase? When I look at Kareem Hunt, we're kind of getting in the latter stage of his career. He wasn't bad last year. He was very effective too. What was it for? Didn't he sign with the Browns there and stuff? He did a great job. I have a hard time trusting Kareem Hunt is 7,400, especially because Carson Steele, it could be a case of, Carson Steele getting less work, Kareem Hunt getting more work this week, but I don't want to assume that happens, AP. And when you look at the projections, we're allotting 26 points to this running back room. That's a ton. 26 points for a Chiefs running back room, and when it's not Pacheco in there, is a little bit of a concern for me. And I don't mind Hunt being the highest projected of the bunch, but I do think we got to see what are these snap counts looking like. If you looked at it last week, do you have the snap counts last week for these running backs?
I do.
So yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. Perfect.
Yeah, so the Chiefs snap count in week 4 was 45% Hunt, 40% Perine, and Steele was just the rookie. I mean, look, man, he shined in the preseason. He's had his moments, but I think he's like a non-factor. Like I want to project him. Like we haven't projected for, or is that Saber? 8.7? So, I mean, whoo. I was like going to not remove him from the pool, but I was pretty close to removing him from the pool. 45% Hunt, 40% Perine, and Hunt looked awesome. 4.9 yards per carry. I thought he looked excellent. He looks very motivated. 10.5 fantasy points. But again, it's more about the 4.9 yards per carry. He was, he had 3 targets. I think it's Perine and Hunt, and I can't see a world where they give anything to Steele. That's me. And again, Big Red, he's notorious for like rotating these 3 running backs in, but I think it's clearly Hunt number 1 and Perine number 2. What do you have it at?
I thought it was maybe I thought on the split was 50, 25, 25. Perine getting passing downs, 25% of that, right? Like 25% of the work, with most of it being passing downs. Steele still getting worked in a little bit, and then Hunt taking on the lion's share. But still a 50 split, a 50% split for him.
Yeah. So I think, and do we have Saber's projections up, or is it
we have ours?
Ours up. All right. So that will get corrected throughout the day. I just think that's a wrong, incorrect projection there on Carson Steele. Like I honestly would put him like under 3. Like I just don't, and this is me personally, maybe I'm missing some coach speak or something like that. But if it was me, it's Hunt and then it's Perine. And honestly, I see it being like 65% Hunt. So, because that was his first game, and he led the snaps.
Hunt. If you're seeing 65% Hunt, that would be more in line with what we should have. And if you think Steele's out of it, like, I'm going to trust you. Chiefs fan, that you are. I'm going to take your word. You're going to guide me to victory here tonight, AP. You're going to guide me to the promised land. And if we're getting 65% of the backfield touches in Kansas City for a guy like Kareem Hunt at 7,400, I'll sign up for that all day.
And here's the other reason why I think that. I just think Perine, going back to last week, was not as effective as Kareem Hunt. 2.8 yards per carry. He's a great pass blocking running back, but so is Kareem Hunt. That's what he did for the Browns. He already has great rapport with Mahomes and the Kansas City team. So I see him being the guy, and I would rather be bullish and buy low here before the field kind of recognizes this, if they're kind of up in arms or questioning the situation. But I feel very, very good about Kareem Hunt's role and him being by far the lead back. So, and I look Rubio. This is what we got to do in Showdown. We got to make these stands before kind of the industry adjusts. So, I have a feeling that as we get closer to lock and throughout the day, that this might be a common theme, because I can't see a world where I play Steele and where Hunt doesn't get the most of the work here.
Yeah, no, that checks out. So let's go ahead and get Hunt up even more to 14. The 14 carries last week, 69 yards. Nice. I want to get his look on the passing situation real quick. I just want to see how many routes he ran in the passing game before I fully bump him up to, I think 14 is very high either way. But yeah, he still ran 11 routes last week too. All right, I'm in on Hunt. I'm very much in on Hunt. When I look at Pirine too, Pirine ran less routes than Hunt. He obviously pass blocked and stuff too. But yeah, I'm with you. Let's go ahead and keep that there. And now let's talk about the Saints running back room. Obviously, you have to love Kamara. No Taysom Hill there can only help him. What he has been doing this year is turning back the clock, and it's kind of crazy to watch, AP. I wasn't high on Kamara coming into the year, and sure enough, he's been amazing. And I don't want to keep fading. We talked about how the quarterbacks were kind of expensive. Well, Kamara is actually the most expensive player on the slate. What does that do for you? Are you sitting here, with a cheap captain, you can fit him in, but are you sitting here maybe trying to get him in at a captain as well?
This is probably going to be one of my big stands. I think when a lot of people analyze and look at this slate, it's going to be, the main question is going to be where do I go at captain? Kelsey, Kamara, like the safe, obvious plays are where we naturally want to go. The problem, Rubio, and again, they haven't faced a guy like Kamara. I get it. But even going back to last year, the Chiefs' run defense has been so good. We have yet to allow an opposing running back over 50 yards. 46 from Derrick Henry is the most in week one. Even receiving yards. They've been very, very, very good against these running backs. I mean, Bijan is maybe not the best example, but you're talking Bijan, 13.2 fantasy points. That's the most that has been allowed by an opposing running back against Kansas City. So I want to bring him down. I think 20 is way too high. We're assuming he scores that is definitely assuming he scores a touchdown. Like if I think of a game where he rushes for, let's say 57 yards and he catches 4 or 5 for. Here's a good thing. What's his current props? And what if we just take a stand slightly under what is current? Like the prop market's going to be pretty telling on Kamara because I think naturally this projection is going to be way over what the props have.
So here's the thing with it, right? It's PPR season for him too. Like on this slate where last week, right, they're trailing. And they ended up winning that game, or not winning that game, losing on a final field goal to the Falcons, but they were trailing for a little bit of that. Final drives and stuff do inflate that. 7 catches last week. If you see a world where the Saints are losing, Kamara's going to get there with short dump-off passes from Carr. They're going to design some plays around the line of scrimmage for him. I look at it here, AP. You have 5 catches, 2 catches, 3 catches. So the 2 catches in a blowout, 5 catches against Carolina despite barely playing in the second half. You have Philadelphia there too, which is his most disappointing performance. Still 16 fantasy points. This is almost the Kamara of old, where he is just almost script-proof. And even if he only has 50 yards rushing, he can still get 5 catches for 40 yards. And all of a sudden you're sitting there, he's got 14 fantasy points. He's not even in the end zone. And that's underwhelming. That's under both of his props. So let me go ahead and log in to DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's go ahead and see.
We're still 8 points higher than that. And one thing I guess that I've seen, just to counter that slightly, is you're really seeing this kind of scheme from Kansas City where they're so focused on taking away teams number 1 and number 2, and that just has really opened things up for. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. I think it was the Bengals where all 3 tight ends put up pretty respectable numbers for the tight end position. Even Drew Sample caught a few for 20 or some yards. So I think it would be interesting to put Kamara right around 16.5, something like that.
I know it's a battle slightly back against you here, right? Because we already bumped him down 2 points. He is 11.4. I want him above Mahomes for sure, right? I do want him above Mahomes. When you look at his props, 4.5 with juice on the over for receptions, 33.5 receiving yards. So you're looking at 7-8 points there. 70 rushing yards is his prop. So all of a sudden you're looking at 14 to 15 and just 4 points alone, right? Like it becomes the touchdown equity with him is extremely high too, especially without Taysom Hill. It only goes up I'll give you. We already bumped him down.
Rubio, we can't assume that like being in line with what the prop market has him at is his floor. Like we can't. So let's give him 5 receptions. So that's 5 points. His over under for reception yards is 33. So we're at 8.5. And then
I like to use it as a baseline, right? And
what's his rushing prop? So we're at 8.5. 70. So all right. So let's go 17. 16.5, 17.
All right. We'll meet in the middle. 17 there. So if you don't know,
that's in line with his props, assuming no touchdown. Now, if he gets a touchdown, yeah, we're definitely screwed. But
so
I like
DraftKings pick 6 AP. So if you look down at the bottom right of your screen here, Mangone is going to have a video that is posted with Kamara's over 66.5 rushing yards for his DraftKings pick 6 play. So is he just doing that to troll our guys? No, he's not. He's not. That's the video that's going out very shortly here on Twitter. So,
Boynton's gonna roof jump if we have any more overs.
I would not agree with the overs on pick 6 because if you're wondering, we love pick 6 every year at Run Pure Sports. Overs are played by the market at a very, very high clip, and the way to get bigger payouts is to hit unders. So he's doing it from a game theory thing, but overs are way more fun. But yes, so
I'm going to take Kamara's under rushing tonight. There's no way Kansas City's been so good against. Now total yards, yeah, if it was a total yard thing for sure, but they're not going to allow Kamara to run all over them.
All right, so to summarize real quick, guys, very high on Kareem Hunt. I think let's actually get him even closer, AP. I'm going to give you...
14. All right. Yeah. That works. No, this works. I like the overweight stance on Kareem Hunt. It falls in line with being under on Mahomes, which I think is correct. Mahomes is just so expensive, and he's going to be high owned. Like Snyder said it best. I'll give it to you, Snyder. You said it best there.
So bad news for me, AP. We get Billionaire back on a Bengals week, a Bengals Giants week. He's going to be celebrating all Sunday night next week when the Giants somehow put up 35 against the Bengals defense on Sunday Night Football. Let's go ahead and get into wide receivers and tight ends. So the big thing, right? We all know it. Rashee Rice out for this week, probably out for a decent amount of time. We'll find out. Hopefully not the season. When you look at it here, AP, Travis Kelce went off in the first half against the Chargers, and then in the second half turned into a ghost. And that concerns me a little bit because I think a lot of people are going to assume Rashee Rice out, Kelce should get more work. And I think that's right to assume, don't get me wrong. But I don't want to be completely overweight on Travis Kelce, despite showing us absolutely no reason to be on it. And last week, what was it, 7 for 89? That's not bad. I needed 90 yards for some parlays, but that's not terrible. I don't want to distance, but he is the top projected guy. And I think I'd rather have Olave over Travis Kelce. I think Shaheed should be more in line with Kelce too, not 2.8 points lower. Give me your take on these wide receiver and tight end rooms.
I think it does set up for a really nice spot for Kelce. So the thing about that, and there that week there were a few Kelce. I was high on Kelce that week. I got luck. I'm not going to say lucky because we're not going to victory lap an injury. It just absolutely sucks. But I was under on Rashee Rice, over on Kelce, and obviously just Rice going down, Kelce becomes the number one. The second half was weird. It was just really weird. There was one more drive there. Kelce fell just short of the 100-yard bonus. If he gets in the end zone, like everything changes about him. And it just came down to a few plays. If he gets over 100 in that game, which he should have, he definitely should have, he has a lot more points. If he gets in the box and he puts up like a 28-piece or 30-piece, we are all jamming Travis Kelce. And let me just tell you, like, he was the guy early and often when Rice went down. So I think he's going to be the guy that they continue to go to. I would rather be bullish on Travis Kelce. Is he dusty? He could be, for sure, but he's going to be that safety valve for Patrick Mahomes. And then it's really kind of diversifies out. It's Sky Moore's trash. Dropped an easy one last week. Just absolutely terrible stuff. Worthy, if he can get over the top, like the big plays will be there, and they're going to take 2 or 3 shots. It's what they do, and they got one last week, which you love to see, but they're not going to take too many shots over the top. Andy Reid, he knows he has a good defense, and he knows that he doesn't necessarily need to do that over and over and over again. So I think it does set up for a Kelsey game. And then we go back to our old boy, Justin Watson. Like Justin Watson's kind of that old, reliable 70% snaps last week. He's going to have these games where he gets, 3 or 4 catches for 60, 70 yards. Who gets in the end zone? Who knows? I like our bet on Kareem Hunt there, but what's Watson's price? 3,400? Oh man.
Yeah.
I think that for if you go back to last season, I'm telling you, it's like Noah Gray, Justin Watson are kind of those reliable guys that can find the zone. And when Mahomes is going through his progressions, he's going to look his way. So for me, it's like Kelsey, worthy big plays, or getting him in like jet motion type, jet sweep out of the backfield, just using his speed. But teams are preparing for that now. So it has to be the Watson, Kelsey, Juju. I can't see it. Maybe a couple touchdowns, but which one of these guys has that big game? It has to be Kelsey, unless Worthy houses one. That's kind of my read on Kansas.
So, did you want to hear Mangone's other DraftKings pick 6 play of the day?
I mean, look at this. One, I like bringing up Nice Kevin because I got my boy Justin Thomas looking up at me, which, love to see. And, Watson just he finds that zone. And I'm telling you, it's like he's going to be that other reliable guy that Mahomes looks to.
So, Mangone's other DraftKings pick 6 play of the day is Juju Smith-Schuster over 15.5 yards receiving.
I don't hate that. I think
No, it was the one guy that you were just not on in this wide receiver room. I was shocked, but
he ran 52%. 52% snaps. I think it's just really telling. Worthy 73%, Watson 70%, Kelsey 87%, Noah Gray 52%. So
that's right. Juju did end up in the winner last Chiefs Showdown slate that we had. That is right. There's also some merit to I want to go ahead just up or down, right?
Let me say one thing real quick though.
Yes.
Luke Schoonmaker a few weeks back, 6 catches, 43 yards, and then Dallas Goedert in that game where Philly was out without so many weapons. 10 catches, 170 yards, and did not score a touchdown. Had he scored a touchdown, oh man. So Kelsey, I think could be a captain that I lean on tonight.
All right. So the case for that would be Dallas Goedert did get a huge bump without Brown and Smith playing, right? But at the same time, it's still very, very solid. I'm with you. Okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to do it. I don't love it, but 16 for Kelsey, which is the top guy, and he is going to hit captain a lot. He's above Kareem Hunt too. He's very much in line with Kamara, who is $3K more expensive than him. We're going to get a ton of Kelsey, right? Worthy, I gave him a very small bump. You saw the big playability. I don't think his receptions are just going to go up. I don't think he's going to be the direct beneficiary of Rashee Rice being out, but I definitely don't think it hurts him. Justin Watson, I gave a small bump. I gave him a 1.4 point bump to 7.5. Noah Gray, he got a lot of looks in that second half AP. Every time when you needed Kelsey, I needed Kelsey last week. And every time I looked up, I'm like, oh yeah, tight end caught the football. And then Noah Gray for 15 yards, whatever. I don't want to ignore Noah Gray. I don't think he should be above Watson, but I do think that these two guys are very valuable plays in this range here. And if you're looking to maybe fit a stud in the captain, you might be forced to 2 of these guys, and that is perfectly fine. Juju, I'll bump him down to 4.25. You weren't really on him. Now let's talk about the Saints room here. Actually, any word on these cheap guys? Did you like Sky Moore or anything like that? 4 routes last week. McCole Hardman, 7 routes last week. You okay with just leaving them?
Yeah, you leave him in the pool because who knows? McCole Hardman's always capable of. They're always capable of designing some weird play for him. And Sky Moore is bad though, man. He's just so I think he's just. Yeah, I bump him down a little bit. McCole Hardman, I think he's fine there. I definitely want the Saints tight ends over all of those guys by far.
Yeah, I think there was word too of I think when guys like Mangone talked about they're using Rashee Rice in the extension of the run game, right? Little quick screens and stuff. Some guy who could fill that role would be McCole Hardman. Not exactly filling his shoes completely, but what if it's for one play, right? Or we'll give Hardman this gadget play. That's certainly in the cards. Saints room now. Rashid Shaheed has been an absolute stud, except for the nut matchup against the Eagles where he put up 0, and I played him that week. But every other week he's been amazing. Chris Olave still has yet to really find the footing to kind of prove himself at the 10K tag. Carr hasn't really been looking his way a ton. It seems like every time he gets targets for like 8, 10, 11 yards or so, it's not like huge chunk plays. But I do want to get your look on the Saints wide receiver room, tight end room as well. This tight end room without Taysom Hill, it becomes like a little less murky. And I do think Moreau or Juwan Johnson, especially because the Chiefs have been so bad against tight ends, should be given an extensive look tonight.
Yeah. I mean, the targets is definitely impressive. I mean, this game's going to be completely different against that, from the Atlanta one. I know Kansas City, they're going to blitz Carr all day with the offensive line struggles, create a ton of pressure. They're not going to allow time for like these big plays to a guy like Rashid Shaheed. I think they're just not going to. You don't see those big plays happen against Kansas City too often, and I think that's what you need with him. Chris Olave was a little bit more interesting just because if you think back to Drake London, I believe it was him and even Ladd McConkey last week. Just if they can move him around, get him those crossing routes, find the hole in Kansas City zone, which they're running at like 65, 70% of the time. I think that is somewhat more intriguing than a Shaheed type of play over the top. So those are the adjustments that I would make there. And then for me, it's like, man, Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau. When I look at the snap counts, I looked at a couple things. When you look at week 3, Taysom was out the entire game. Foster Moreau, 71% of snaps. Juwan Johnson, 50%. Week 4, Moreau, 57%. Juwan Johnson, 68%. So I like those two guys. I don't know if it's like a spot where you create a rule where it's like one or the other, but not both. I mean, I don't necessarily want to do that in Showdown formats because there are paths to where you play both of them and Kelsey, 3 tight ends. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's the slate, all in on tight end slate. Who knows?
So here's the routes ran, right? This is a big one. Week 4 only. Juwan Johnson ran 23 routes. Foster Moreau, only 6 routes. So Juwan Johnson's clearly the favored receiver out of the tight end room. But I do look at it here. Like, you also have a guy like Mason Tipton, 22 routes last week. 1K. They obviously are banged up at the wide receiver position. Am I missing anything like that? Like, he's a guy where what's his projected ownership
like
right
that.
now? Like, 2%. I think that'll be higher. I think a lot of people might gravitate toward that just because it's a lot of routes for a guy who's literally almost min price. 1K is super cheap. Juwan Johnson, 23 routes last week. I like Juwan Johnson. We've seen the Chiefs tight end funnel a little bit. If he's going to run those routes, he got 3 targets last week. I'm fine with it. Tipton, 1 target last week, and it ended up being a 22-yard gain. Foster Moreau turned 6 routes, 0 targets last week. I'm okay buying these lower guys on the Saints. Then on the top side, though, with Olave and Shaheed, what do you think that we should do? Should we keep them where they are, kind of, or do you want to bump anyone up?
I think bump Shaheed down slightly and keep Olave kind of in that range with where he's at. I think is perfectly fine.
So what do you want?
I don't want to fully fade. I don't want to fully fade them, but I like these secondary pieces, and I like that Tipton call too. I think having him in line with Foster Moreau is like perfect.
Yeah, and I think that
maybe even ahead of Foster Moreau, to be honest. Like, just if he ran that many routes,
let's do that,
or the same.
Let's do that.
Yeah,
and Foster Moreau, like, he had that week 1 where he was really good, but that was when like Juwan Johnson wasn't completely healthy, right? That's the one thing that we kind of got to like mention is Juwan Johnson wasn't fully healthy coming into the year. So the 9 routes that he ran in week 3 compared to Foster Moreau's 8, it was a very even split. You said Taysom Hill was out that game and stuff. It's still like not great. Tipton in that same game, 3 targets. So I mean, there is merit to going a guy like Tipton, but I do think Juwan Johnson is the favorite tight end in that room. Now let's go ahead and move on to our favorite addition: kickers and defenses. And this is a couple teams that love kicking field goals.
Yeah, very important tonight. Kickers.
It is. And I don't know if I'm under projecting them, AP, but like it feels like every time we're getting kickers in the winter. And I don't know if you have like the optimal shootout, but like it feels like kickers are just hitting at an insane rate with like 1 or 2 kickers.
So I haven't updated it through week 5 yet. I'll do that this afternoon. But through 4 weeks, as far as captain goes, 8% rate at the captain spot, which is insane. I mean, you're talking about 3% in 2023 and 22. So it's a pretty insane number. And a lot of that you could credit defenses kind of getting stingy around the goal line, not as many touchdowns. Definitely, you're going to value those 3 points tonight, especially on the Chiefs side. Just lacking anytime you have the opportunity to get points, I think Big Red is going to take them, and you have one of the best kickers in Harrison Butker. So I don't want to I don't know, should we give them a 9? Kansas City is going to kick field goals if they have that opportunity tonight. So
our guy Deegs made the mention too. Kicker pricing has gone up almost 1K across the board. I would say more like 800, 600. Like you saw Aubrey last night, 5,800. Did Aubrey end up in the winner? I can't remember if he did or not. I'm going to check that out right now. The kicker pricing has changed, and it is worth noting. And I don't want to get too little of these guys. I think you had a guy like Groupie who's been going on.
Aubrey was not. We had no kickers. So Deegs, that's a really good point. And I think I'm going to isolate this because I did notice that change this week. So I think that will be an interesting thing to look at.
So it ended up being a 98K split. It was 300K up top, and I think 5 people took home 98K even. Tolbert captain, which pissed me off because I was on Tolbert captain. Dak Prescott ended up being in the winner. Fields, Ferguson. So it was a double quarterback with Dowdle, and then the Steelers defense was that wrench where you kind of what do they call that? A correlation breaker, right? Where you still have Tolbert, Ferguson, and Dak and Dowdle. You're running a 4-2. This is the exact build. Oh my God, that is such a good team there. I love Tolbert Cat coming in. That's like the type of build that you had. It was the Steelers defense that ended up getting ahead of Aubrey and them. They had 11 fantasy points. Wow. Did you see Bryce last night, AP? Solo 6th place with a unique.
Really?
In the main contest. Took home 10K last night. And he had Aubrey. Aubrey was in the second best lineup, but it still finished just a little less than 3 points behind the first place lineup. So, Bryce, I didn't realize you had such a sick build there last night.
Yeah, I mean, so tonight, I do think I do think it's interesting because defenses are just from a pricing standpoint. I think there's a lot of value in defenses. We talked about it, afternoon window, rare to see that, but a defensive touchdown in every single game, absolutely mind-blowing. Just a completely random thing that you can't, predict. But the one thing is Kansas City's so aggressive. They are going, and given the Saints, their offensive line problems right now, Spags is going to absolutely blitz them. So the opportunity is going to be there. I think there's more value. I like defenses and kickers tonight. Who knows, where it ends up, but I definitely want them in the mix in our pool. Even Saints defense too, just banking. There are situations where, and we saw last week, Mahomes has looked bad on those first few drives. Mahomes can come out and throw a pick 6 right away. And it's I feel like Kansas City constantly is getting down by double digits early, and then it's Mahomes coming back, or Mahomes and this offense coming back, and the defense just holding on until they get the win. So I want to be high on both defenses for sure.
Yeah, it's nice. I bumped up the Saints defense just a little bit, and we're still getting to get those skill players a little bit more, the wide receivers and tight ends. But I bumped these defenses up a small bit, and I do want to be a little overweight on them. I do want to be overweight on defenses going forward. Groupie, I bumped about 3/4 of a point, so 0.75, and then Butker, I kind of kept it at 8.25, 8.4. Do you think he should be higher, or do you like where he's at?
I think that's fine. 8.5, I think is perfect. Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and run these 5,000 teams with the custom projections that we just uploaded. Because
bring the salary down a little bit. That mid salary,
100%. And then we can even look at lineups that leave a bunch of salary a little bit later on too. We still got 16 minutes to kind of spare and stuff. If we go up to noon. Diggs, that is tough. I would say this. I kind of overlooked Hayward last night, but there was a point in time where I looked at the props and a first touchdown score, and it was any other score. It was Steelers' first touchdown score. It was 18-1, and it didn't have Hayward. It didn't have another key piece and stuff that's not the worst odds. I didn't end up hitting it, but Hayward ended up scoring that, and he got into the end zone pretty easily. I know that I was sitting on a Najee first touchdown ticket along with Lamb. So I was hoping you'd go down to the 1. Let's go ahead and see. We got the 5,000 teams building out. I reserved 6 contests before coming on, and they are each a different contest. So I think we're in a single entry, 20 entry max, 3 entry max, the main flagship contest and stuff. We'll build it out to 20 teams. You can kind of get a sense of where the best 20 teams are in terms of ROI for each contest. So we're running that contest sim right now. But yeah, just to kind of get an example, let's go ahead and just go to contests here and how you did that. It asked me to upload my entries, and the first thing that I did when I came over to Saber. So I reserved 6 contests real quick just so we can get some contest sims up using this instead of making them custom. So we're going to be doing a 3 entry max, 3 single entries, the 20 entry max, and then the flagship 150 max. So you can always add on to that later on, and it's best to do it an hour before lock when you're using Saber. You want to make sure that all the final sims are done and the ownership is reflected accurately. And here's what we're going to do. This is the ROI. I think this kind of fills into the contest, separately. This is using autofill right here, and it doesn't have the clean view, so we have to use direct fill. AP, first contest we're going to be looking at is a single entry, and it's the $5 single entry. I think this is the one that a lot of people enter. A lot of people might really like. We're going to look at the top 20 teams for the $5 single entry tonight, which I think is what's it called? The huddle? Yeah, 500. The $5 huddle contest. So first thing that you see, AP, a 4-2 Saints build with a Car Olave Shaheed.
With the guy I hate, captain.
Yeah. Well, correlates greatly. I like the way it correlates. Here's something that might be a little more if you want to Kareem Hunt. Man, it loves those Saints pass catchers today, huh? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think these make sense for single entry. My concern is just lack of defense. Like I do think the defenses are good values. I think I have this as like a 2017 game. Really similar to what we saw when the Saints played the Eagles, where that game was just a disaster.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think there's a kicker. So that was interesting.
So
and
I'm going to do.
Even though we're highest on Kelsey, it's probably his price and ownership projection, right?
Yes.
Why it's kicking it out.
Exposure-wise, we didn't get any Kamara in this set right here. Like, we didn't get any Kamara. So if you look at it here, no Kamara, no Mahomes. A lot of Kelsey, a lot of Carr, a little bit of Olave. I actually thought we'd get a little more Olave. Oh, yeah, we did. We get a lot of Olave in the captain. So real quick, kind of similar to what we talked about. The great thing about contest sims, let's go ahead and just a captain point down. So that's about 0.67 points down. Let's bump these guys just slightly up. They're not going to be up a ton, right? And let's just rerun the contest sim using this button here and then see where it kind of plays out if these projections change by literally less than a point, and then see where we land. Because when you look at it, I think you wanted kicker, and we're getting a ton of Olave, who you mentioned. You didn't really want Olave. You didn't really want Shaheed. You wanted those cheaper options a little bit more. And it seems like in our first run, we weren't getting that as much.
Yeah, and I mean, it does fit the game script and everything. I just knowing what Kansas City likes to do, having both of those guys and Carr in that lineup, like I get what that lineup's trying to do. No Kamara, so naturally, where are those points going to come from? Man, I find it very difficult to get that type of environment where you have Carr plus 3, pass catchers that land in there. So I think for single entry and stuff, it could make sense. But I'm curious to see the 500K up top, the flagship, because I want to see some defenses in there. I want to see some of those correlation breaker type of builds.
This is a fun stack real quick. We'll get to the 500K in a second once this one is done simming. Only one quarterback has thrown for a touchdown against the Saints this year, and it was Dak. That is funny. I don't hate the idea of fading Mahomes. Like I think I like that. Real quick, this is what that small adjustment did. It gave us the Kareem Hunt one at top. Still giving us a ton of Olave. Let's see if we just subtracted Olave. Do we get a build without him? This could be something that you like right here at the top. But let's go ahead and move over to the 500K contest. And that is the showdown here. ROI, top 20 teams in it. What do we get? We get a Shaheed captain with Olave. You love it.
It's just trying to force my hand. Like, what's our projection on Shaheed? Well, he's all right. So he's 8K,
Oh.
and we have a 12 projection on him.
It's not. It's
We
not
have we have
expensive at all.
yeah, we have Cal. It's an ownership thing. It's definitely loving the leverage there.
We really bumped down Kamara. Really bumped it down, and what it's doing is it's forcing these flatter builds on you, right? It's
like
just
that.
If we built it out to 200, right? Let's just
Kamara's cheeks, man. Chiefs are going to expose him.
We barely get any Kamara. What this is doing, I think it's showing the value, though. A lot of people, and this is what the Sims are doing, the easiest leverage on Kamara is to play the passing game around him, and where Kamara's not scoring, right? Kamara is going to be super chalk. You jam the passing game around him. There's a lot of money that can be made. So here's what a Kamara lineup looks like. AP 5-1, 5-1, 5-1. Oh my goodness, that is tough. I'm gonna do this, AP. I want him head and shoulders above anyone else, right? And this is my personal take. But this is what your builds look like right now without bumping them up. Top 20 teams exposure-wise, your highest exposed guys, Carr, Shaheed, Hunt, Kelsey, Worthy, Olave. Same thing in captain, Olave, Shaheed, Carr, Hunt, Kelsey. Anyone that you're looking at here who you're wondering, should we have more of? Like, is Mahomes at 15% right now out of 20 lineups? Is that good enough for you?
Oh, man. It's – hold on. Scroll down just a little bit so I can see the now scroll up a little bit. So, like, the thing that I think that I'm just surprised that we're not getting more of is kickers. That could be due to price. No defenses is kind of wild. What is the current ownership projection on the defenses?
The ownership on the projection on the defenses, I think it was 6% for the Saints, 8% for the Saints there. And then for the Chiefs, well, we got to scroll down for that. 21%. That is fairly high. 7.4 is like not a bad projection, but it's not above those other guys like Juwan Johnson and stuff. Here we go. Just reran it. We said Chiefs defense is here. So let's go ahead and check it out.
Chiefs still like the Saints defense too, man. Like Mahomes has looked off like
Well, so let's look at this Chiefs defense build here. 5-1 Chiefs. I don't love it, but at the same time, like that would make a little bit of sense. You're going their number one wide receiver. I think these would make a lot more sense with like Kamara, where you're just looking for a guy to get there with PPR points, basically. Saints defense, let's see what we get. We got a 5-1 with Kelsey as the lone guy. I kind of making my point to last night, AP. I think they're way better than the Steelers offense. Don't get me wrong, but like outside the volume of Kelsey, really, right? Like, and not even Kelsey has been that great this year, right? Who on the Chiefs is really going to step out and say, I have to have them? Sure, you can make the case for Kareem Hunt. He's not terrible. Kelsey, not terrible. Xavier Worthy, I mean, he can get there with a big play and stuff, but no one is jumping off the page for me. Like, I feel more inclined to do a 4-2 Saints tonight, despite them being underdogs, because I feel like the volume for the Saints is much easier to predict, and we might get more volume from them. Like, you mentioned it. The Chiefs' offense has not looked stellar. Mahomes has barely cracked 20 fantasy points in the last calendar year. Like, I'm very fine with more Saints heavy stacks, even if that means like a build like this. I really like it. I know that you're not extremely high on it, but I think Shaheed, Olave, Carr, with Juwan Johnson, like that's a full blown Saints stack with the two best skill players not named Patrick Mahomes on the Chiefs. Like, that is very fine to me. I really struggle to see how they're going to move the ball. That's why I feel like it's going to be a gross game. And people are going to say refs and all this stuff. But, I mean, look, like Chiefs are allowing 98 yards a game on the ground, 230 yards passing, which is very good. I mean, I'm really surprised about that touchdown stat because Saints are allowing 255 yards a game through the air. But they are really good against the run too. 96 rush yards per game. And the key is to kind of peel back the layers on that. Like in weeks 1 and 2, teams weren't running the ball on them in the second half because they were down by 30.
Yeah.
So
I think it's one a really interesting showdown slate. I think there's a lot of variance. From like in times like this. Like the one guy I trust from a volume standpoint is Kelsey. I know he sucked this year. I hope his owner, like if this was like last year or the year before, Kelsey would be, I mean, his ownership would be absolutely insane, but everyone thinks he sucks. Everyone thinks he's dusty. They're going to see that Rashee Rice last week, Kelsey didn't like absolutely nuke, like, he sucks. Even though he was close, he should have been there. It was just a weird game in the second half. It was a really, really weird game in the second half. Had he gotten over that 100-yard mark, had he gotten into the end zone, it would be a different discussion right now. That's all I'm saying. So I don't know. I kind of like that build right there, but I just struggle to see big plays in this game. Like, to Worthy over the top. We saw that last week. Can they really get away with that 2 weeks in a row? I don't think so. And I fail to see the, Shaheed over the top too. But those builds are nice, I will say. Those builds are definitely
like
nice.
That. Xavier Worthy, kind of first time that I even talked about his price. He's $9K. That is
Deegs, I talked about Kamara. Kamara's go look at pricing. Kamara is $11,400. Kelsey is $8,600. That's a massive difference. It's a massive price difference.
So here's a build that I think you would like, AP. I mean, let's just say you swapped out Worthy for Kelsey. You're leaving 800 in that case. But, like, this one makes sense. It's got Sheed, Captain, but Carr, Kamara, Johnson, and it's got Butker and then Kelsey. Like, that's the type of build that I'm looking at. I'm looking at 4-2 Saints tonight personally. These pop out to me. If you're looking for a 4-2 Chiefs, you can throw Kelsey in here. Hell, you could probably even get Mahomes there. You're only 900 away from Mahomes. Like, this could be a build that you might like if you're looking for Kamara. Like, I just wanted to isolate the Kamara builds because it's going to be a very popular play tonight. The Sims are not especially high on him. We bumped him down with projection just a bit too. But those are what the Kamara builds look like. And I also want to see if we even get a Captain Kamara, what that looks like too. At the top, it's Kamara with Kelsey, Hunt. Wow. That one's got to be no dupes in the 500K. That's surprising to me. What's the set? Leave 1,700. AP. What do you think about this top build for Kamara Captain?
So what I was going to say to our friend Deegs is I like Kamara, but not in the Captain. But still, if he gets there based on volume alone, I just think, let's just say he gets there on volume. We're playing him from a volume standpoint, not touchdowns. I feel like kickers and defenses play a role in this. My script's gonna be so wild tonight. Like, I don't know. I've watched enough of these Kansas City games. We're all gonna be wanting to like stab our eyes at the end of the night. It's been a long weekend of football, and we're not gonna get an exciting game tonight. I just don't think we are. Like, that's not how Kansas City is built right now. It's lean on their defense, take away the team's number one and number two, these peripheral pieces, John Johnson. Maybe it's your boy. What's that cheap guy's name? He wasn't even on my radar. I'm definitely bumping him up. They're gonna give up plays to those type of guys. I mean, it's really telling. Then it's Hunt and Kelsey, and then Justin Watson on the other side. So I don't know, man.
This build at the top can fit Groupie over Watson. I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking for and stuff, but that would be a 4-2 Saints in that sense. It leaves 1,700 in salary. And this is the thing, AP, where I like not looking at salary, because if you would have told me this top lineup, if I didn't show you the salary, you'd be like, well, that's a good team. And I thought that same thing. And then you find out it leaves 1,700. Like, you can make teams without filling the salary. So here's what we're going to do. Let me see if I can find a build where
Here, you find one. I'm going to answer this question right now. Great question. So going through my process, and it's pretty extensive right now, doing the NFL playbook. I dive pretty deep, and I talk up a lot of different spots. Okay, I definitely do. But I'm trying to keep it in a mindset of, hey, not everyone may be focused on what I'm focused on. So I'm trying to give information and insight to other spots. Not trying to talk up everyone, but I had Burrow ranked like number 2, and I was very high on that stack. And it just came down to getting tunnel vision and just fixating on the Jordan Love game and the Packers. And how do you bounce back from that? I don't know. I mean, I kind of just, you have short-term memory and you move on and you trust that, hey, the process was right. Just remember, like, don't get tunnel vision. And I'd been so good at fading the chalk games each week. I felt like this was going to be the week where the chalk smashes and the cash game bros and GPP bros were shaking hands at the end of the night. Wasn't the case at all. And yeah, but We bounce back. We have a short-term memory, and that's how you handle it. You don't let it affect you. And a lot of that comes down to bankroll management too. I wasn't putting in the type of volume that if I get, absolutely bent over, it's not going to affect me. So that's a big part of it too.
So to send us off, I just highlighted some builds that use less than 48,400 of their salary, and this is just for unique aspect, right? You're just trying to find a little bit of unique lineups where you're leaving like 1,800. These are not bad builds at all. What do you need to happen? You need Carr to outscore Mahomes. You need Kamara to have an underwhelming game. These are the type of builds that can kind of get there at the top, where it's leaving a bunch of salary, but it's also a competitive build there at the top too. With like when you're fading, Kamara, in favor of a guy like Olave, it's definitely difficult. So these are the type of builds that if you're looking at it, leaves 2,400. It's going to be unique. You have a decent chance to get a solo shipper at the top instead of maybe a share of 5K or whatever. Like we saw with Bryce last night. I didn't realize how close he was to that 300K hit, but it was a unique lineup that got him into that position that no one else had. AP, who's your most important player of the night and why?
Show me one build real quick. I want to see a Juwan Johnson captain build because he's going to be my most important player.
Perfect. Let me go ahead and get that up for you.
I mean, what happens when all the touchdown equity goes, the 2 touchdowns that the Saints scored tonight go to Juwan Johnson. And we're all kicking ourselves. We're all kicking ourselves because it's like, play tight ends against Kansas City. It's been a printer every single week this season. What happens when our boy Juwan Johnson gets 2 touchdowns tonight? I can definitely see that happening. There's a build I like. Screw it. Snyder, you go play your boy Rashid Shaheed. I'm not going to play him. I know what Kansas City does. They're going to take him away. It's going to be Juwan Johnson season tonight with Kelsey. Those are going to be my 2 most important players tonight.
I like it, AP. Here's what we have on tap for today. You have the Print Factory going live probably around 3 o'clock. You'll also have the Showdown King Show at JBC and Wiley at 4:30. You'll have a bunch of content on the site for the Monday Night Football game, the 3-entry max and stuff. We have NBA starting in literally less than 2 weeks, or 2 weeks and 1 day, I should say exactly. We also have NHL starting up tomorrow. We get a bunch of stuff going on for the season. October is here, so a bunch of sports are going to be beginning. Thank you all for watching. My most important player of the night, AP. Let's go ahead and do it. And I'm going to say, who should it be? Who should it be, AP? I stalled too much and couldn't even think of my guy. I'm going to go Rashid Shaheed. I think Shaheed has a big day. I really like his talent. Last time I played him, he got 0, so he's due for me. Shaheed's my guy. Fits a lot of builds that I like. You can get him over Olave. You can leave a decent amount of salary with him, but still getting an integral part of that Saints offense. For AP and for I, thank you all for watching. Hit that like button on your way out, and have a great rest of y'all's day.